What's up, kings and queens? It's Dan from Daft Previews, and I am back. I've got another comprehensive preview for all 6 games on this upcoming slate. I'll be previewing all the key players. I'll be talking about their matchups, review their props and their lines, and I'm also going to share my screen and take you through every single one of them. So, as always, I'll be using props.cash. If you're interested in doing your own research, taking it to another level, you can sign up today and get 25% off your first month using my code DAFT25. Let's go. We're kicking it off with the Brooklyn Nets versus the Philadelphia 76ers. A lot of lines are up on the board, so this is going to be a juicy video. So get ready, buckle up, let's go. First player we're looking at is Nick Claxton. Checking out his points line first. He's hit this in 4 of his last 10 and only 1 of his last 5. Head-to-head matchups against Philly, quite up and down. He's hit this in 3 of his last 8 games against the 76ers, averaging 11.9. We know that Joel Embiid is out, so let's just quickly check games without Joel Embiid. He's had 2 of them. He scored 12 points and 19 points in his last matchup with no Embiid on the court. Jumping into his rebounds, 12 rebounds in that last game without Embiid, but that's the only game where he's covered his rebound line. So no Embiid. Looks like it's a good rebounding night for Nick Claxton. Looking at his last 10, he's at this in 5 of his last 10, 2 of his last 5. He's averaging 11.6 rebounds per game. Quick look into Spencer Dinwiddie, checking out his assists. He's hit this in 4 of his last 10, 2 of his last 5. Has passed the ball quite well against the Philadelphia 76ers, though. 5+ assists in 6 straight games, covering this line in 5 of them. So Spencer Dinwiddie assists, not a bad play there. Let's have a look at Tyrese Maxey, the first-time All-Star. Absolutely killed it after getting announced. First game back from injury, 51 points against the Utah Jazz. Covered this 31.5-point line in 3 of his last 10 and 2 of his last 5. He's only covered in 1 of his last 7 against the Brooklyn Nets. But no Embiid. He's an all-star now. And matchup-wise, this is great. So the Brooklyn Nets allow the most points to point guards over the last 30 days. They've been absolutely getting killed by point guards. Tyrese Maxey with his current form. And the fact that he's getting a lot of whistles go his way, I can't see why this doesn't hit. But Tyrese Maxey playing very well at this minute. Let's have a look at Cam Johnson. Rebounds and assists. More so rebounds is what I'm looking at, but we'll check out his points. So he's covered his points line in 4 of his last 10 and 3 of his last 5. Head-to-head matchups, he's covered in 3 of his last 6. Rebound-wise, 3 of his last 10 and only 2 of his last 5. Has rebounded well against Philly. 4 of his last 6. Earlier matchup this year, he had 5 rebounds covering this line. And the 76ers, they allow the 3rd most rebounds to small forwards over the last 30 days. Next one to look through is Michael Bridges. Points-wise, he's covered in 3 of 8 games against the 76ers. 5 of his last 10 and only 2 of his last 5. But wanted to have a look at his assist prop because the 76ers allow the 2nd most assists to 2 guards over the last 30 days. And he's hit this in 7 of his last 10, 3 of his last 5, and he's hit this in his last 4 games against the Philadelphia 76ers. This is quite juiced, though, minus 178, but, could be a good ad for those parlay players, you know what I mean? Let's have a look at Tobias Harris. No particular matchup advantage here, but he's covered his line in 5 of his last 10, 2 of his last 5. If we remove Joel Embiid from the equation, we can see that he's hit this in 3 of his last 5 games without Joel Embiid, averaging 24 points per game. His last 2 games against the Nets without Embiid scored 24 and 25 points. So Tobias, not afraid to get some buckets without Embiid. Rebound-wise, 3 of his last 5. He's hit, 1 of his last 5, 3 of his last 10, my apologies, and 3 of his last 8 against the Brooklyn Nets. Cam Thomas, been shooting the ball very well lately. Had 1 big game against Philadelphia 76ers last year. Provided he gets the minutes, this man can get buckets. So he's covered his line in 4 straight games, which is pretty juicy. 4 of his last 5, 6 of his last 10. So Cam Thomas, getting some buckets. Have a quick look at Kelly Oubre. He's played well over his last 4. Lines at 16.5. 2 of his last 10, 2 of his last 5. 3 games against the Nets. He's covered in all 3. Now let's have a quick look at his numbers without Joel Embiid. And we can see 4 of his last 10 games without Embiid, he's covered 3 out of his last 5. He's gone over 20 points. So Kelly Oubre Jr. could get some buckets here against the Nets. We're jumping into the Golden State Warriors versus the Atlanta Hawks. Kicking it off with Clint Capella. Now, in terms of his matchup, the Warriors allow the fourth least rebounds to centers. So looking over his last 10 games, he's covered his line at 9.5, 7 times. He's covered it in 4 of his last 5. In head-to-head matchups against the Warriors, 9 rebounds and 11. So I think he does go close, but matchup possibly going to be difficult for him. Jumping into Steph Curry. Let's have a look at his points line. He's covered this in 3 of his last 10, but 3 of his last 5. Against the Hawks, 31 and 25 points earlier this season. Assist-wise, Steph Curry, he's covered in 3 of his last 5, 5 of his last 10. And against the Hawks, he got 8 assists in their last matchup earlier this year. Trae Young, he just had a massive game today on a back-to-back. 15 assists against the Phoenix Suns. Let's start with his assists. 7 of his last 10 and 4 of his last 5. He's been killing it. He's covered this line in both of his last 2 games against the Golden State Warriors. So passing-wise, looking delish. Points, 6 of his last 10 and 4 of his last 5. Trae Young, snubbed from the All-Star game, came back with vengeance today. Last 2 games against the Warriors, 30 and 25. Line set at 25.5. So I do like Trae Young to continue this excellent form and absolutely rack up the stats in this game. Let's have a look at Draymond Green. Now, the Hawks, they do allow a lot of assists to centers, the third most assists to centers. A lot of the time he's on there as a 4 or a 5, but for a large portion, he's there as the 5. But assist-wise, he's quite inconsistent at the moment. 4 of his last 10, 2 of his last 5. Can have big games, but can also allow someone like Steph to do the playmaking. Had 3 assists in his last matchup against the Hawks. So won't be taking any Draymond Green props, I'll tell you that. Jalen Johnson. The Warriors allow the 4th most assists to power forwards. Now, he's been decent getting this done. 3 of his last 5 and 5 of his last 10. He's averaging 4.2 assists in his last 5 games. Trae Young's been there. Last matchup against the Warriors, he had 6 assists, which is pretty cool. Rebound-wise, lines at 8.5. He's hit this 5 of 10 and 3 of his last 5. 9 rebounds in his last game against the Warriors. Points-wise, he's hit his points line now in 7 of his last 10 games. He's hit it in 5 straight. So safe to say he's in great form at the moment. Looking at how he played against the Warriors, 21 points against the Warriors earlier this year. So for me personally, I'm liking the points and assist prop that I'm seeing here for Jalen Johnson. We go points and assists. We can see he's covered that in his last 5, 7 of his last 10, and he had that great game against the Warriors earlier this year. Against the Suns today, he played 37.7 minutes, which is pretty much his average, but he is on a back-to-back, so they might go a little bit deeper in the bench, but I think he can still get it done. Jalen Johnson, points and assists is what I'm thinking. Jonathan Kuminga, now this guy's in great form as well. Check that out. He's covered this line in 6 of his last 10, 4 of his last 5. He's averaging 23 points per game in his last 10. His last 5 games, he's averaging 26.6. So 29 points today against the Memphis Grizzlies, which is crazy. His actual line was, look at that. His line's been moving up, 22.5. So it's pretty much the highest it's been in his entire career, up against the Atlanta Hawks, who give up a lot of points. So they allow the 5th most points to small forwards, but they also allow the 3rd most points to power forwards. So Jonathan Kuminga, destined for a big game here offensively. Andrew Wiggins, he's been quiet. I just spoke about the matchups. He's got a good one. Quiet today against Memphis with 9. Prior to that, he was scoring a hell of a lot of points. Covered in 3 of his last 5, averaging 16.6 points per game. Played in the earlier matchup against the Hawks and only scored 12 points. So Andrew Wiggins seems like he's fallen off a cliff and he can't recover. Klay Thompson, lines at 19.5. Covered in 5 of his last 10 and 2 of his last 5. Scored 24 points against the Hawks earlier this season. Prior to that, 15 and 54 points. But look, the Hawks do give up a lot of points to guards. They give up a lot of 3-pointers. They let guards shoot at a high percentage. So if there's a bounce-back game for Klay, it could be here tonight. DeJounte Murray, the Warriors, they actually allow the least rebounds and assists to shooting guards. But we'll quickly look at his points. 5 of his last 10, 3 of his 5, he's covered. So he's been hitting this 20-point mark on a pretty consistent basis. Head-to-head matchups, he scored 23 points in that earlier game this year. Heading to his rebounds, where he's meant to have a difficult matchup, he's 5 of his last 10, 3 of his last 5, but he's killed it against the Warriors. Assist-wise, he's killed it against them too. So matchup tells me the last 30 days, the Warriors have been good at slowing those things down, but looking at DeJounte's numbers, it may not matter too much. So I still don't mind a DeJounte PRA on this one, to be honest. Look at his PRA. Line set at 33.5, and you can see that he's hit this in 8 consecutive games. So another team faced on a back-to-back, played 39 minutes against Phoenix. So be interested to see how the Hawks respond here. Looking at the Sacramento Kings versus the Chicago Bulls, looking at Nikola Vucevic first and the Kings. They allow the second least points to centers over the last 30 days. He's hit this 4 of his last 10 and 2 of his last 5. Head-to-head matchups, 12 and 20 points in his last 2. Rebounds, he's hit this in 4 of 10 and 2 of 5. Last 2 games against the Kings, 6 and 14. And assist-wise, he's gone 4 of 10 and only 1 of his last 5. And he's gone under both times against the Sacramento Kings. Looking at Domantas Sabonis, fills up the stat sheet, snubbed by the All-Stars, responded with 26 against the Pacers. 5 of his last 10 he's covered, 2 of his last 5. He has gone under in his last 2 games against the Chicago Bulls. Rebound-wise, 3 of his last 10, 2 of his last 5. The line set at 13.5, which feels like a mountain. But 17 rebounds in his last 2 games against the Chicago Bulls. So he's done it against Vucevic before. Who's to say he won't do it again? Assist-wise, 5 of his last 10 and 2 of his last 5. Had a triple-double last 2 times he's versus the Chicago Bulls, Domantas Sabonis. So didn't get a triple-double against the Indiana Pacers. Some would say that he's due. De'Aaron Fox. The Bulls, they allow the least points to point guards over the last 30 days. Now, Fox has covered his line in 5 of his last 10 and 3 of his last 5. Against the Bulls, 16 and 32 points. Assist-wise, 5 of his last 10, 2 of his last 5, trending downwards. He's gone under in his assist line his last 2 games against the Chicago Bulls too. Keegan Murray. Now, the Bulls allow the second most rebounds to power forward, so we'll start there. 4 of his last 10 and 1 of his last 5. Keegan Murray covering this line. Last matchup against the Bulls, he did record 10 rebounds though. So one to consider. Keegan Murray's points, 5 of his last 10, 2 of his last 5. Gone under his points line last 2 games against the Chicago Bulls. Let's have a look at DeMar DeRozan. He's covered his points line in 3 of his last 10 and 2 of his last 5. Scored 33 points the last time he versed the Sacramento Kings. Rebound-wise, 5 of his last 10, but only 2 of his last 5. 6 and 3 rebounds against the Kings. And assist-wise, 4 of his last 10, 2 of his last 5. He's gone under his last 2 games against the Sacramento Kings. So a lot of these form lines telling me the same shit, and this is going to require a bit more time to land on a pick. But the last one I wanted to look at was Kobe White. So why Kobe White? You can fill up the stat sheet. The Kings, they also allow the 6th most rebounds to point guards. Kobe White grabs a lot of rebounds for a point guard. But let's look at his points first. He's only covered in 4 of 10, but he's covered in 3 of his last 5 games. He's gone under in both of his last 2 games against the Kings, but I'm pretty confident he would have been playing off the bench at that time. Rebound-wise, he's covered in 4 of his last 10, 3 of his last 5. Head-to-head matchups, got 6 rebounds in his last game against the Sacramento Kings, only played 28 minutes, so definitely would have been a bench player, because as a starter, you can see over his last 10, he's playing 38 minutes. So I don't mind the rebound prop here for Kobe White. I think I can see it happening. Assist-wise, he's covered this in 4 of 10, but 3 of his last 5. And he went under his assist prop against the Sacramento Kings in each game. So the Los Angeles Lakers versus the New York Knicks. Kicking it off with Anthony Davis. Now, the Knicks, they actually allow the least points to centers over the last 30 days. And Anthony Davis has covered this line in 3 of his last 10 and only 1 of his last 5. Head-to-head matchups, 27, 17, and 32 when he last met the Knicks. Rebound-wise, 7 of his last 10, 3 of his last 5, and 16 and 14 rebounds last 2 games against the New York Knicks. Assist-wise, 1 of his last 5, 5 of his last 10, and 1 and 3 against the New York Knicks. So he's actually played pretty well against the Knicks in terms of points and rebounds lately. Not a bad pick. Isaiah Hartenstein, let's check his boards. 6 of his last 10 games, but only in 2 of his last 5. These 3 games, Toronto, Miami, Charlotte, I'm pretty sure he had limited minutes. Yes, limited minutes in those games, so he's actually been rebounding extremely well. 17 rebounds in his last matchup against the Lakers. So I don't mind Hartenstein for some boards against AD. D'Lo. Now, the Lakers... the Knicks, they allow the 3rd least points, but the 5th most assists to point guards. So looking at his points, he's gone under in his last two, but prior to that, he had great scoring form. In head-to-head matchups, 33 in one game against the Knicks last season, but only 9 points in their most recent matchup. Assist-wise, 4 of his last 10 and 1 of his last 5 against the Knicks. 8, 8, and 4. Nothing screaming out to me there. Jalen Brunson, let's check out his points prop. 3 of his last 10, 1 of his last 5. Line set at 32.5. Head-to-head matchups, 37 and 29 against the Los Angeles Lakers. I think Jalen Brunson for 25 is an excellent pick. Nice little safe one for some parlays. 32.5. I'm not sure I'm willing to play it. Assist-wise, 5 of his last 10, but only 2 of his last 5. He's got under his both games against the Los Angeles Lakers. Want to have a look quickly at his rebounds, because the Lakers allow the third most rebounds to point guards. He had 4 rebounds in their last matchup. He's covered it in his last 5 out of his last 10 and 3 of his last 5. So 3.5 rebounds at minus 154. I don't think so. Let's check out the King, LeBron James. Now, the Knicks, they allow the least rebounds to power forwards over the last 30 days. But LeBron's covered this rebound line 5 of his last 10, 2 out of his last 5. He's had monster rebounding games against the Knicks, 10 and 11. Points-wise, 5 out of his last 10, 3 out of his last 5, 28 and 25 points against the Knicks. So I think LeBron for 20 is an excellent parlay. He's always going to get his. Assist-wise, 7 of his last 10 and 4 out of his last 5. He's covered 7.5 assists. In his last 2 games against the Knicks, 11 and 11. So he's had a triple-double his last 2 games against the Knicks, LeBron James. I don't know if he still has that type of energy in the tank, but he's going to fill up the stat sheet, that's for sure. G. Anunoby. He's covered this points line in 3 out of his last 5. Last 2 games against the Lakers, 23 and 31 points. Rebound-wise, 6 out of his last 10, 3 out of his last 5, 6 and 2 boards against the Lakers. Josh Hart. Now, the Lakers, they allow the most assists to small forwards. So we'll check out his assists and his rebound prop, because he ain't shooting. Rebound prop-wise, he's killing it. 4 out of his last 5, averaging 10 rebounds per game. Head-to-head matchups against the Lakers, 16, 10, 8, and 5. No Julius Randle, gives him a lot more opportunity, and he's playing more minutes too. So 8.5, it's a big line for somebody who's like 6'4", but I don't hate it. Assist-wise, the line set at 4.5. He's hit this in 3 out of his last 5 games. And against the Lakers, 2 out of his last 4. So the Lakers, they do allow the most assists to small forwards, though. So keep that in mind. Dante DiVincenzo, and I do like his points prop for this one, and that's because the Lakers allow the most points to shooting guards over the last 30 days. DiVincenzo puts up a lot of threes. Last 3 games have been great, 28, 33, and 20. That game against the Pacers was always going to be a difficult one for him, because they don't allow many three-pointers. They run you off the line like crazy, whereas the Lakers are a little bit different. They allow the most three-pointers made in the league. They allow teams to shoot almost 38% from 3, so they're bottom 8, and they allow the most points to shooting guards. So DiVincenzo, I got a real good feeling about him. Austin Reeves. Let's have a look at Austin Reeves. 14.5 points. Last 2 games have been crazy. 28 and 32 points. 6 of his last 10, 4 of his last 5. Last game against the Knicks, he scored 20. Looking at his assists, 7 assists in his last game against the Knicks. He's covered this assist line in 8 of his last 10 games, 5.4 it as an average, and 4 of his last 5. So Austin Reeves, points and assists at 19.5. Could be a good shout. It's hit at 60% so far this season. It's hit at 60% in his last 10, but it's hit at 80% in his last 5 games. Jumping into the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Dallas Mavericks. Looking at Brook Lopez firstly, because this man can fill up a stat sheet sometimes. And you always think, damn, I wish I got on Brook Lopez. He's killed it in his last 3, 24, 19, and 19 points. His line set at 13.5 for this one. He's hit that in 3 of his last 5. He's gone under this line in 3 straight games against the Dallas Mavericks, though. Rebound-wise, his line's at 5.5. He had some great rebounding form and then has all of a sudden done nothing. And he hasn't rebounded well against the Mavs in the past either. Kyrie Irving, looks like he's set to make his return. He's covered his points line in 6 of his last 10, 3 of his last 5. He hasn't played a game in about 10 days, though. So almost 2 business. I was going to say 2 weeks, but they're business days. So about 10 days, a week and a half he's had off. So I won't spend too much time with Kyrie. He's covered his rebound line in 9 of his last 10. I think check to see if there's any minutes restriction if he does play. He's still a game time decision. And assist-wise, he's hit it in 4 of his last 5, 7 of his last 10. Against the Bucks, 2 games with the 6 assists. There's his rebounds, and there's his points. Got 39 points against the Bucks early this year. Dame Darla had great form against the Dallas Mavericks, covering this line in 4 of his last 5. Looking at his recent games, 5 of his last 10 games, but only 2 of the last 5. Rebound-wise, not assist-wise. He's got a difficult matchup when it comes to his assists, though. The Mavs, they allow the 4th fewest assists to point guards. Line set at 6.5. He did cover it 12 assists in his last game against the Mavs, though. So take what you will out of that one. Let's have a look at Luka Doncic. Now, the Bucks allow the 2nd most points to point guards. His line is at 38.5. Jesus Christ. He's covered this in 3 of his last 10 and 2 out of his last 5. Last 3 matchups against the Bucks, 27, 33, and 35 points. And this line set super high. My Lord. Didn't even notice that. Rebound-wise, line set at 9.5. He's covered this in 3 out of his last 5. Coming into this game with some good form. Has gone under this line in 3 games against the Milwaukee Bucks. Assist-wise, he's covered this in 2 out of his last 3. Looking at his last 10 games, 4 out of his last 10, 3 out of his last 5. So, man, Luka's PRA is 59.5 points, which is crazy. I'm not game enough to take an under, but that's a lot of everything in order to take an over there. I hope he hits it. Let's have a look at Giannis. Now, Giannis, the Mavericks allow the 2nd most points to power forwards. His line's at 32.5. He's hit this in 2 of his last 10 games and 1 of his last 5. Against the Mavericks, scored 40 points against them earlier this year. Rebound-wise, he's only hit this in 2 out of his last 10 and 1 of his last 5. So, again, the line set very high. He had 15 rebounds against the Mavericks earlier this year. Assist prop, 6 out of his last 10. He's gone under in 3 straight. And he had 7 assists against the Mavs earlier this season. So, this is a crazy game. Couldn't find anything juicy there for Giannis or Luka. Not to take with confidence anyway. Chris Middleton, the Mavs allow the 7th fewest points to small forwards. So looking at his points prop, he's hit this in 3 or 5, 6 of his last 10. Last game against Dallas was in 2022, where he scored 19 points. So I wouldn't worry about his past form. Let's check out the recent one. So let's check out his rebounds. 3 of his last 5, he's covered his rebound line. And 2 of his last 5, he's covered his assist line. So he's going to smash it, or he's not going to get close by the looks of it. Last one I want to look at is Malik Beasley. Now, he's got the best matchup on the slate. The Mavs allow the 2nd most points and rebounds. They allow the most assists and the most 3-pointers made to shooting guards. So, Malik Beasley's only covered this line of 9.5 in 4 of his last 10. He hasn't covered it in 5 straight games. Against Dallas, he's only covered it in 2 of his last 6. So the matchup is great, but his recent form and his form against the opponent's not the best. Looking at his rebounds, he's rebounded well against the Mavs. Rebounded well in 6 of his last 10 to cover this line. That's at plus money too. 3.5 rebounds. Assists, doesn't get many of those anyway. So that sucks. I wish the Dallas Mavs were playing a shooting guard who was a bit more dangerous than old Malik, but we'll get another chance, I'm sure. Let's jump into the last one. So Cleveland Cavaliers versus San Antonio Spurs. First one I want to look through is Trey Jones. Now the Cavs allow the 4th fewest points and assists, and the fewest assists to point guards. Points-wise, Trey Jones has hit this in 4 out of 10. He did cover it in his last 2 games against the Cavs, though. Assist-wise, he had 5 assists in his last 2 games against the Cavs, and he's hit this line in 6 out of his last 10, 3 out of his last 5. So he's been playing quite well, but he gets a difficult matchup tonight. Next one's Devin Vassell. Now, the Cavs allow the fewest points, 3rd fewest rebounds, and the 2nd fewest assists to shooting guards. Devin Vassell just missed a game winner today against the Pelicans. Should have passed it to Wemby, but chose to shoot it. Been scoring the ball quite well, covering this line in 4 straight games. In head-to-head matchups, scored 22 points against the Cleveland Cavaliers earlier this season, about 3 weeks ago. Rebound-wise, 4 out of his last 10, 1 out of his last 5. He's covered this line. And assist-wise, he's gone under in 3 straight. Could have had 4 assists against the Pelicans, but chose not to pass to Wemby. He's gone under his assist line against the Cavs last 2 games. So Devin Vassell, under an assist. Yeah, it makes sense, but I don't like playing unders, and that doesn't seem like a fun thing to do. Next one, let's go into Jarrett Allen, because I love his matchup today. The Spurs allow the 2nd most points and the 4th most rebounds to centers. Scored 29 points against the Spurs earlier this season. That was about 3-4 weeks ago. In his last 10 games, he's been playing quite well. Covered it 4 times, but scoring 14 points a lot. So maybe an alt line of 13.5 is the way to go for Jared Allen. Rebound-wise, let's have a look at that. He's covered in 6 of his last 10, 3 out of his last 5. Did have 16 rebounds in that game against the Spurs. So he had a monster game against them last time. He could do it again. Assist-wise, started to drop off a little bit, so I won't spend too much time there. Evan Mobley, the Spurs allow the 3rd most rebounds to power forwards. I'm not sure if there's a minutes restriction on Mobley. Let me have a look. 20, yeah, he looks like he's only playing 20 minutes per night. So 7.5 rebounds and 10.5 points. The matchup is good, but I don't think you can get that done in limited minutes. Let's have a look at Wemby. Now, the Cavs allow the 5th fewest points and the 2nd fewest rebounds to centers. Wemby's been quite consistent as of late. Finally went under 20 points against the Pelicans. Had 15 rebounds in that game, though. Just couldn't get the buckets. How did he go against the Cavs? 24 points the last time they matched and 10 rebounds. Monster game from Victor. So there's his points. There's his rebounds. Difficult night on a back-to-back. We'll see how he goes. Donovan Mitchell. Now, I don't know if Darius Garland is playing or not. His prop's not available. But give you the matchup for both point guards and shooting guards. So Spurs allow the 7th most points to point guards, but they allow the 5th most assists to shooting guards. Points-wise, he's covered this in 5 of his last 10. Scored 17 points in his last matchup against the Spurs. Assist-wise, been passing the rock like a king. 8 of his last 10 and 4 of his last 5, averaging 8 assists per game. Last matchup against the Spurs had 9 assists. So does Donovan Mitchell rack up the assists once again? I'm not sure, but we shall see. So that's a wrap on today's preview. I hope you loved it. In a previous video, I was sharing some information about a spreadsheet that I had with all the NBA player prop factors that you should take into consideration. I've got a link in the description box below where you can download that, play around with it. Let me know if you have any questions, but hopefully that should help you out with making better selections, because just looking at recent form and form against the opponent is not enough. There's not enough information there to make a decision on whether you should take a pick. It does require you to dive a little bit further. And with that spreadsheet, it'll give you all the different things that you should take into consideration. So let me know if you have any issues, but jump into the description box and download that form. All of that is free. As always, if you want to tail my bets, you can check my final picks in the pinned comment. I'm going to run a lot more parlays and same game multis, but just finding it a lot easier and a bit more fun, to be honest. Betting like a casual again, because just running these single props is doing my absolute head in, getting hooked all the time. So running it safe. I'm previewing almost every single player that's going to play anyway. I might as well put a few more bets on them. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. I appreciate all the kind words, all the support. Stay blessed, fam. Peace.
Up to the channel cause your boy's getting busy. Coming to your line from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice on the daily. It's all free, you don't even have to pay me.